Okay, so it's 9 o'clock for me, but and I know everyone's on different time zones. Especially thank you, Andy. I think it's 6 a.m. for you. Speaking of, and Siobhan, it's probably 9 p.m. for you. Um, and Mahesh said that he may not make it. It's early for him, and he also has a telechat, I think, that overlaps with part of this meeting, but he'll try to make it. Um, So this is the NetConf Working Group Virtual Interim. Uh, I'm Kent Watson. I'm joined by Per Anderson, my co-chair, and we have to do the typical note well. I wish this was a little bit smaller on my screen. I can't even see it. Here we go. So everyone knows the note well, but just be mindful that there are guidelines in place with regards to um, internet standards process, working group processes, anti-harassment procedures, code of conduct, copyright, patents, participation, and privacy. Presumably everyone's had a chance to look at this before, but if you haven't, please take time to be aware of it and be mindful that everything that this meeting is being recorded, and anything you say is considered a contribution to the IETF. There's also the note really well, which is having to do with more about the code of conduct and just generally we try to conduct ourselves professionally, and if there's ever an issue, encourage to raise your concern with one of the ombudsman persons. I was unsure initially if this session would be recorded, but I do see at the top of the Meet Echo window that it is being recorded, which is excellent, but still it would be good to take notes. I posted a link to HedgeDoc to the chat window, and if everyone could log into that and help us take notes, that would be great. Today's agenda is it's a single topic agenda, which is to discuss how to support the requirements behind the Note of Yang and other documents wishing to extend the RFC 5277 header. Just to add a little bit more color to that, there's been an effort. Really it started with the subscribe notifications and then Yang push, and improving the way that NetConf notifications are relayed. And that work has been picked up by Swisscom and INRA and others who have created drafts to improve that ability to use the NetConf notifications and to ingest that data, the telemetry data for closed loop automation. And so how to make that data more useful, by extending the header, which is the primary topic, so that there's more metadata in the header and it makes the notification more useful, is become important. There are a number of documents, individual drafts in the NetConf working group queue that are waiting to be adopted. And one of the issues has been how to do this in a way that will, I don't know, I want to say work, but that's kind of too simple of a phrasing. How to do this in a way that's backwards compatible with existing clients, and will extend well into the future, right? So that's what we're trying to achieve. So that is the topic. We have the entirety of the meeting time to discuss this. The authors have prepared some slides, which I'll bring up in just a moment, and they'll first present, I guess, the slides, and I mean, up to them if they wish to be interrupted while presenting, but I wouldn't imagine, I think there's 23 slides, so it's not going to take that long. But and then the duration of the time is to try to discuss this and find a way to come to an agreement or a solution. I really hope that this interim will unblock the adoption calls, or at least enable the ability for the adoption calls to proceed. And with that, let me bring up the next set of slides. All right, and Alex, these are the slides you just uploaded this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kent. Do I have control of the slides? No.
Give me a second, I'll make you.
Yeah, that would be very useful, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You should have it now.
Yes, great. Okay, so I am Alex, and I will be present how this young push notification header is allowing this extend to so that the header can be extensible, but also making a bit young push work nowadays. So what are we trying to do? What we are trying to do is when a router pushes a young push message to a collector, or the collector can validate the message before it can be ingested to the time series database. Why do we want to validate that message? First, because we don't want to break the time series database or to Kafka or the next pipeline. And that's why, in a way, the collector needs to get first the message, but also all the YAML modules that are related to that message to know that, okay, this message is ready to be ingested. And regarding the YAML modules related to that YAML modules, the message is valid. Note that this message can be encoded in XML, but also JSON and other YAML encodings, such as CBOR. And this is how the message looks like today. So YAML push in 8641 defined push update and push change update notification statement, which defined its own header, having the ID, but also the data store contents with the content of the notification. But it relied on the subscribe notifications and NETCONF event notifications for the, let's say, the envelope. That's the orange header that I am talking about. So this message, when it is encoded in XML, there is no issue because 5277 defined already a model to validate this message. So from an XML message, we can know from the young push young module the content if it's valid, and also from the model of XML know if the header is valid. But when this message is encoded in other encodings, such as JSON or CBOR, we cannot validate the message because there is no YAML module. And if we want, we should have validated that message against an XML model, which is a bit strange. So that's why, from an implementation perspective for young push and NETCONF event notifications, a YAML module first is required, or using even normative text defining this header. Does not go now. Do you see my slide?
I see it. Yang model.
Slides
You're on slide number 3 right now.
Oh, sorry, it's delayed here. Okay. So as I said, YARN push defines the push update, push change, update notifications statement, relies on subscribe notification 8639, which themselves defines the RPCs for configuring the subscription to data stores, but relies on how the message would look like on the XML definition of 5277. Okay, for one who is implementing, let's say, YARN push or a YARN notification, what does it look like from a YARN perspective? What does it look like if we look at the YARN definitions in 7950, 7951, and
Hey,
92?
Alex.
Yeah.
Alex, your voice is breaking up. I don't know if you're able to improve your networking or your microphone.
Let me.
And it might. Oh, I think he just exited and he'll come right back.
It's now better?
It's different. Say some more.
Hello?
Yep, I think it's better. Please continue.
Okay. So as I was saying, what happens if an implementer, instead of going through the YARN push definitions, goes to the YARN definitions of a notification? So what I'm saying here is 7950 YARN with XML, 7951 YARN JSON, and 9254 in YARN CBOR. First, for the 7950, there is a section explicitly for the 2.10 who defines what is a notification in a YARN statement and how YARN notification in XML should look like. We see that there is the content of the notification, in this case, link failure, which has the if name, if admin status, and if upper status leaves. And then there is a header in a notification container with the event time leaf. So there is no issue here. Please note that this event time is also based on the 5277 NETCONF event notifications, which define the XML model. So in XML, everything is covered. In YARN JSON, notifications are not covered. And there is a section covering any data statements which they have a notification. Somehow in this subcontainer of a notification, we also see the event time as it was defined in 5277. But as I said, the notifications are not explicitly covered in a JSON definition. And somehow same happens in CBOR. So CBOR defined the notification as a container-like structure. So for them, all the notifications are just a container. There is no IETF notification container. There is no event time leaf. So the requirements to make, let's say, to validate this YARN push message is having a draft that covers this gap. So this should be complying with first YARN push, such as the message that was defined in that RFC. Ideally, for sure, there should be a YARN module definition so that the tooling can use YARN rather than text. And requirements coming from other contributors is that this notification header should be extensible, such as the NETCONF notif sequencing draft. So just, I think here, Yes. So just until now, this is the problem statement. Is there any questions about? Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe I have a question.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm just looking at the title. It says Yang push specifications, and I know a lot of this has to do with Yang push, which depends on subscribe notifications. But is the scope of this discussion limited to subscribe notifications, or is it actually with 5277 and you know the notifications that existed prior to the subscribe notifications?
So this is due to how Yang push was actually architecture, right? Yang push was based on subscribe notifications, which themselves were based on 5277, and therefore we need to let's say update 5277.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That's what I'm thinking.
So the proposal that I will present afterwards does not extend anything. It's totally backwards compatible with 5277. And then it can be used to extend the header for 5277. Exactly. And in that case, sure. So the extensions could also work for 5277 and Yang push for both.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question, Alex. So Yang defines notification in general in the 7950 defines the Yang notification. So what you are proposing is a solution. Like, are you trying to fix only the Yang push part, or all the notifications in Yang?
All the notifications in Yang.
Okay.
Yeah, and that goes to the scope question that I was just asking as well. And I think it was on an earlier slide, Alex. I thought I was actually hoping that maybe this discussion was limited to configured subscriptions, but Alex definitely notes that it's for dynamic subscriptions as well.
Yes, because at the end, here so the difference between dynamic and configured subscriptions is that the management node is different or is the same node as the collector, but the message itself is it does not change based on if it's dynamic or configured subscription. So this layer of notification container at the end is the same.
And the reason why I mention this is goes we at the top before Alex started his presentation, I noted that how to do this in a way that will work with legacy clients. So the legacy clients that are using dynamic subscriptions, actually I don't know if we have any legacy clients using configured subscriptions just yet, but so anyway, so this you know this is the scope and whom we need to ensure that we maintain interoperability with.
Just to note that, well, I will present the proposal first.
Yeah, sorry. I see Thomas in the queue, and actually everybody. I mean, I'm not for these interims, and certainly a single topic interim like this. You know, I don't necessarily think we need to follow the whole queue. You know, so please just jump in. Go ahead, Thomas.
I just wanted to comment on your comment, Kent, regarding the legacy client. I think at the very end of the slide deck, we have slides when we are extending the notification header, how basically the clients can discover this. So I think there we're getting into that area.
Perfect. I guess I should wait till the end. Thank you.
Yeah, Thomas made a good point. So just until now, I'm not extending or defining any new header. I am just fixing a gap to say how the notification should look like. So from the young push perspective and from the RFC 5277 perspective. That's the gap I am trying to fix with this draft, notif young. So yeah, going down with the proposal, which is defining the notif young draft. First, we are mimicking how this definition is done in RESTconf. That is using normative text to explicit how these messages should look like. Two, we are defining a structure in a young model so that the tooling can use a young rather than the let's say the text. And we are leaving RESTconf out of the scope, which I will explain later why we are doing that. This draft updates different RFCs, 5277, because this definition was based on this RFC using an XML model. 8639 subscribe notifications because this solution was based on 5277. And young JSON and young CBOR because these notifications are not explicitly defined, and we want a common, let's say, structure for such notifications. Note that 7950 young XML, it's not updated since it is well defined in there. So first, we are using normative text for each encoding, XML, JSON, and CBOR. We are stating that there is, when a notification is encoded, it should have a notification container. And within this container, it should have an event time node, which was defined in 5277. And we are defining this using text, normative text for each, let's say, encoding, XML, JSON, and CBOR. Number two, we are defining a young module, which is totally backwards compatible with 5277, which defines the structure of the notification, which in this case only have the event time leaf, which was defined in 5277. The content of the notification is defined by the notification statement, which can be, on the one hand, young push update notifications, but also NETCONF notifications defined in their own young modules. And this structure was first based on the feedback from 2022. And why we are defining this as a structure. So our understanding is that the content of the notification is defined by the notification statement. So everything in there is well defined and is able to be validated, but somehow from 7950, there is a notification header that appears and an event time leaf, which is not present in this notification statement. To have a binding between this notification statement and our young module, we felt at least that the structure was the way to go. I tried to implement this as simply as a container rather than a structure. And my understanding is that if it was implemented as a container, the notifications should be bound by an augment statement rather than a notification statement. Here, I would like if anyone feels the same way or have different feelings about it. But that's at least why we defined this young model as a young structure rather than a simple container. And then we are leaving RESTconf out of the scope. Why? Because RESTconf themselves, they define their own notifications, how these notifications should look like in XML and in JSON. And for example, in JSON, they define that there is IETF RESTconf as namespace for the notification. And so that to not impact those clients, let's say, we are leaving RESTconf out of the scope of this draft. So that's a bit the proposal. We had plenty of interest about this draft during the working group adoption call. There were some pushback that has been addressed with MET, and also triggered some young push discussions. And what I want to discuss in this meeting is if this is the right way to fix this gap. Please note that I am not extending the header yet. So this draft only addresses the gap in to encode the messages in other encodings rather than XML. And the feedback that I would like to have is updating the RFCs the way to fix this issue? Is normative text the way to go? Is the YANG valid? Should we provide some text so that the YANG is valid? How could this YANG, let's say, be valid? And if there are other solutions, I'm happy to discuss them. So far, I've been raised with the NETCONF notification message. I don't believe this draft solve this issue. This draft defines a new way to bundling messages. The gap that I have now is that there is no YANG module defining the event time live, which is defined in 8641. So for me, we are trying to solve different problems. And a new one, let the transport decide. But in this case, how this, let's say, header should be negotiated. We could end up with different implementations implementing different type of headers. And of course, in my opinion, it would not be complying with the YANG push definition. So that's a bit my understanding. And yeah, and that's it. So are there any feedback or any opinion?
So Alex, I've got a quick question first. So assume you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that Kent raised the sort of backwards compatibility question, and Thomas mentioned that that'd be covered. Is there other slides that covers that backwards compatibility?
No, not in this case. These are already the extensions. I don't. My slides have finished already. No.
Is Thomas planning to present some slides?
These ones.
So I thought maybe that the best way to describe is, since until now what Alex described does not change the structure of the message. It's still the same JSON message as before, but we have now a YANG structure which describes the schema. I thought best is to describe now, if we are now extending the notification header, what would that imply for a client? How does it discover that now we have a different notification header? Does that make sense to describe it in this context?
Yes, I think so. So, I mean, going back to Alex's questions, I definitely think we need to define this in JSON, as we need to have a well-defined description of what one of these notifications looks like in JSON. I think that we want to be able to add extra fields in. I think that's a sensible thing to do. There's obviously questions as to exactly where to put those fields and whether they are applicable only to YANG push or not, or whether they're applicable to other things. I think for me, defining these within Yang feels like a nice thing to do rather than having just normative text within a document saying this is how you do it in JSON. I think that having a Yang structure is nice, particularly that's extensible, that allows people to add extra fields in. So I'm sort of quite keen in that direction, which I think is sort of consistent with what's being documented here. One thing that I do wonder is, and again, it depends on what others feel about, is we could just define a brand new structure for Yang push notifications that sort of solves the problem from that perspective. Just say, well, this is how it's going to be done. But then that was my question about backwards compatibility, that if we do just define a brand new notification structure, is how do you turn that on? What's the config to do that? And what happens if you don't support that?
So that's the thing. In this draft, what I am proposing is, let's say, resolving the gap in Yang push that makes, let's say, developers a bit, let's say, difficult to implement. I am not changing anything from NetConf event notifications nor Yang push. I'm just defining something that was undefined in this draft. Then, of course, on the extensions, that's another thing. How to extend this header, how to make this header compatible with 5277. That's for me another discussion. But at least I'd like so I like this draft so that developers know where to find this structure in a Yang push.
So, Alex, since you asked a question, the question number 2, printing a Yang module, I think it's the right way, right? And somehow, if you agree with Rim's statement, then you already answered that question, that it would be great to have the Yang tuning for validation, right? Now, on top of what Rob mentioned, that it's also pretty useful for extensibility, I think the Yang module, the 2B, is like an obvious one to me.
Okay.
Right. So I have a few questions, Alex, because the whole premise of this proposal is automated validation, right? And
Yes.
that's, I think, the main success criteria for this proposal. I have a few questions regarding that. First, have you used any of the existing Yang tools to validate this, like using libyang or byang?
No, not yet.
Okay, so this hypothesis that's going to help developers still not verified by existing implementation. That's what I understand from the statement. The second statement I have, something is weird for me about this proposal. So when I looked at the Yang structures RFC in section 2 in definitions, it says that the Yang structure is encoded the same way as any data node. This means the name of the structure is encoded as a container with the instituted children encoding as a children to this node. So I'm expecting now, if I understood that statement correctly, this is gonna be a subtree, not the way you wrote it here.
A subtree. What do you mean by a subtree?
So it's a container, right?
Yeah,
And
I have brought up this point many times, is that this structure only validates a container with one leaf in it called event time.
exactly.
I think Rob already hit on the solution, which is to just define a new structure for the new header you want. The RFC 5277 is done, implemented. There's no problem in the world at all parsing an RFC 5277 header. You want to make a new header with a new structure. I certainly prefer to see one RFC instead of like 7 little, one leaf drafts. make a new header, and then the client would simply opt in for the new header and get the new header, and it has nothing to do with RFC 5277.
Right.
Just define a new header.
Sorry,
that's what it seems like to me, because for validation, this, as I said many times, this does not validate a notification. It does not have any of the capabilities of XSD, substitution group.
Okay, sorry, Andy, let me finish my points with Alex first. Sorry. So I agree with you. Like, this is exactly what I want to get to before we get into a proposals. What we should do, I just want to validate: is this proposal usable as it is to validate the structures? Because that's the whole premise. Or do we need?
Do you see a push update in here? In the structure notification, do you see a NetConf event and any kind of events? No, it only has one leaf in it. No tool is going to validate a real notification against this.
But the push update notification is defined in the Yang module from Yang push, no? With this structure and the push update from the Yang module, you could have all the requirements for validating the message, no?
No, that's not what this structure requires. It's a, see how the notification is the parent, it has one child in it. That's all that will validate against this structure. There's no ability, unless you made another one that was augment structure with a copy of push update, which, you know, I don't see the point of that. This Yang is not capable of doing this unnamed abstract element that XSD has. But just gather all your leaves together and make a new structure and call that the new header. I don't know why that's so hard.
So if I understood that correctly, what you are saying is that there is no solution to this gap from a Yang perspective. That's what I am understanding.
If the problem you're trying to solve is to validate an actual notification message, then no, Yang does not have any capability to provide that leaf. I mean, it's not. It's actually in 5277. It is just simply an element. It can even be, you know, an empty element. It's just one more element that's expected to be there. I don't think the problem you're trying to solve is really to validate RFC 5277. It should be to introduce a standard header, a new header that you want to use. I don't know, without any augments. Also, is just the idea that now the notification header is going to be made up of whatever vendors want to just throw in there, and have to read the Yang library to figure out how the notification header has been augmented and deviated. That sounds like not very nice and clean at all. But there are new fields spread over multiple drafts that you want to get into a new header, and I don't understand why that isn't the focus of this work.
So yeah, the extension. So let's say how to make extensions of that header. For me, it's clear, and that needs to be backwards compatible and everything. But
it's not going to be backwards compatible. You can forget that. Okay. Because once the element looks anything different than what that XSD validates, then it's not backwards compatible. But that doesn't matter. All you need to do is have the client opt in. The client add a parameter to the notification, established subscription, and the configured. This is, I want the new header. And then it works with old clients and new clients.
Okay,
but you're not gonna be able to add fields to the notification and have it validate. In fact, we even got a ticket, a trouble ticket on that one with the sequence ID, because even adding one thing to the notification XSD makes it not validate. It's very specific. It's just a container with two elements in it. But I don't see why the new notification message needs to follow 5277.
So
but you want to try to
that's only
solve that
because
problem,
the YAML push it relies on 5277. That's the only reason.
Not if you extend Yang push with the new parameters, which you're already doing in several places.
So
yes,
I was just gonna make a quick comment.
Drafts that are already augmenting in many places. I prefer to see it kind of gathered together into some coherent work rather than all these separate drafts. But I think Mahesh has also pointed that out.
Yeah, just a quick interject. Yeah, it is planned that all the like what 3 or 4 or 5 different drafts will be brought together into a single draft. And like right now they're broken apart into separate drafts, I think, for the purpose of adoption. But though, I mean, or discussion at least, but it is planned that will become one draft and it'll go through the IETF process as a single draft.
All right, I agree with the previous suggestion. Show me the Yang lint, file trace that validates this push update.
Because otherwise, in XML it's clear, but in JSON, where it's defined that I need to have a root notification container and event time leaf. That's my question.
Well,
that's a question, a very
Yang
valid
doesn't
question.
do it. Sorry. See all that part in yellow? Yang can't do that.
So, I mean, if we define, so Alex, if we define a brand new message for this notification type and describe how it is defined using an extensible structure, I'm not sure we need to define any XSD for it, whether that be required. I think we could sort of effectively just bypass 5277 and say, look, you turn these things on, this is the structure, this is the fields we'll include and be defined automatically, this is how you can augment extra fields in, this is the validation for it, and this is how it's encoded in different choices of encoding. I wonder whether I would just sort of give a cleaner path, and the opting in is just setting either maybe a config option or global config option to do it, or within this sort of subscription message say I want the new header type. I think the only thing that gets left if we do that, the one thing that needs to be closed is if you're generating the existing notifications, the 5277 notifications over JSON, I don't think it's well defined as to exactly how that's encoded, as in I don't think it's well defined what the top level container looks like. It is for RESTconf, but it isn't outside of RESTconf.
Yeah, but exactly. Remember that NetConf only supports XML, so it's an academic question how to do JSON over NetConf.
Well, but with Yang push though, you do dial out, so you don't need that. It's not over. It might be configured over anything, but you don't have that NetConf session. It's just you're opening a. So it's like a Yang push.
You wanted to find that for the UDP notif. I don't know how many times to say how to say that Yang does not provide the part in yellow. And so to do this for validation is to be unclear on how Yang works.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
To do this to have a standard definition of a new header is like what you is like. That's what I understood the goal was, but.
Okay. So if we remove the Yang model and have normative text saying how the message should look like, would that at least solve the gap for Yang push?
I think
That's
you
on
should
the
define a new
proposal
header.
number 2.
Just take all the little drafts like
Yes,
draft
I
net confidence notice sequencing -06 and combine it with the dash, notif yang 05. And
yes.
if you have
So
any other
I agree with you. For the new extension draft, we will make a new one extending, let's say, the header. But for Yang push, without any extensions, for current implementations that do not support any extensions, there is still a gap for this header. So how at least should we solve this gap?
I don't know what you're talking about, because it's working just fine without all these drafts. And so an old client will simply do what it's already doing. A new client that knows about all these additions to Yang push, the observer ID, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's getting added on to Yang push. To say we can't touch Yang push is already disproven. There's drafts that are doing that.
Does this works when it's XML? XML, I totally agree with you that it's all well defined. But when it is encoded in other encodings in JSON or CBOR, it is not defined.
I get that. So write a new draft that says how to do it. To say that it does nothing to do with RFC 5277, which is for XML only.
I have a question. If you can show the slide with the yellow that's been mentioned, is it because the data store contents is any data that we can't in the push update? Or what can't we validate with Yang here, you mean?
So the thing is that Yang push was defined relying on 5277.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. And I read RFC 8641 before. And yeah. I wonder what we can't validate in the push update.
Okay.
Is it because the data store contents is any data?
No, well,
in the push update, everything is
the notification contents, if you read RFT 5277, is an abstract element after event time that can have any name in any namespace, and it's just an element. So it's push update, it's NetConf session start, it's whatever. There's 2 push updates, and also so that's how XSD works. So that Yang doesn't have the ability to have an unnamed element there. Okay, so you would have to have any data called push update. That's all any data supports. It doesn't have unnamed elements in the schema tree.
The event basically in 5277.
The event type is an abstract element in the XSD, and it's just replaced by any valid thing that matches so it's just a mechanism in XSD, and it allows anything to be there. Yang doesn't have that, and it never did. So any XML or whatever, you'd have to have a choice of every possible and then every possible event that can exist in every single module. That doesn't sound very workable. And then it actually doesn't validate anything because it doesn't have the real contents anyways. So that's why I've been saying over and over, this doesn't validate the part in yellow, which is the main part, really.
Alex, Andy, everyone, can we split this into 2 problems? So we're clear, because the discussion here is a bit going in circles. One is there a gap? Is that a solution to the gap? And the third thing is how we extend forward. Can we start agreeing on these one by one? Otherwise, if we go like from 1 to 2 to 3, personally, I don't
understand the gap. A gap between what and what?
So basically, Alex's proposal started with saying there is a gap. There's things underdefined in the JSON encoding and the CBER encoding, right? This is the first.
Yes.
The second thing, he have a proposal to fix this gap. The third thing, Andy, is how we can add additional headers, because there is other ongoing work that's trying to extend the Yang notification and adding additional fields. Did I summarize your points correctly, Alex, here?
Yes. Thanks.
So let's focus one by one for the sake of it. I'm sorry if I'm stepping over here, but like I wanted to start this, and then Andy, you stepped on me first. So do we all agree there is a gap?
I think I certainly agree that there are new things that you want to do, so that means a gap exists. Okay.
No, this is not it. So this is number 3. For first thing, do we have everything that is well defined that we can validate Yang notification as it is today?
Over the UDP notification protocol, the new UDP notif.
Over UDP notif, over TCP.
That's the only standard that's in progress to carry these Yang notifications.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing else. I guess HTTP notifications should say how to do this.
So for me, it's when it's defined in XML, no issues. In JSON and CBOR, it is underdefined. I think in HTTPS notif, this encoding and this header, let's say, it's in JSON, they define it in the draft. I don't like the idea of that. It seems like we are stepping like crossing different layers. And I prefer having a different draft defining how the application layer looks like. That's only my view. But I agree that in that case, in UDP notif, JSON and CBOR, there is no definition on how this notification should look like.
So I agree with you, Alex, on this one. Personally, I agree. I understand implementations just assume things. In the text, if you read it, there is no clear way how notifications are defined on JSON or CBOR. I looked for the JSON one implementations, at least in LibYang, they assume it hard written in the code that there is event time, but they don't really validate based on something. So my
no, that's not. I don't think that's what RFC 8040 says about RESTConf. But I think we already went through this and found that NetConf doesn't support JSON. You're talking about standards that don't exist. Yang push is not a protocol. It's just a model. Okay, there is no Yang push protocol.
Let's say I don't have Yang push. I have this message on the right, this JSON message on the right. How can I validate it?
As we've said before, Yang has no ability to validate the part in yellow.
The part in yellow.
It's the way tools do this is that they validate in steps, and they know that when it gets to the event to go look up the notification.
Yeah.
So it's not done with a single Yang validation step from top to bottom. So that's how implementations do it.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's why, for me, there is a gap, because this never been defined in any RFC that the tool should do that or anything else. That's for me a gap, because no one defined how to validate the message on the right. To my knowledge, I mean, tools assume it. I know tools do that. Tools do that.
Yes.
By doing manual steps. They do that. I checked at least the LibYang implementation, and they do that. They check it, they validate that thing. But there is no existing RFC that actually says this is how you should do that if you get this JSON representation of Yank notification.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I don't know that implementations are having a hard time with that, but I think the part that has seemed interesting to me is Thomas's draft of adding things and just moving on to a new header, and that seems like new work that this is you're kind of getting wrapped around the axle on this validation, and
so moving
I
on
think it would be great if Yang could actually model this, but it right now can't.
So whether it's done in one step or two steps, I think the key requirements is that we don't want to pollute anything we put in TSDB. That's why, Andy, there is so much focus on the validation itself. Now, fine, let's do it in two steps, right? But this is why it's key.
Well, I don't really prefer to have this tiny little structure and then it's going to be augmented in a bunch of different ways. And I don't think that really leads to the kind of interoperability that we want.
Right, but you're already back to the problem number 3, like Akbek mentioned. So let's recall what he said. First, is there a gap? 2, how do we solve it? And number 3 is how do we extend with new header? So to me, we're still in number 1. Did I misunderstood?
So all right, so you want to have a new RFC that says that you're expecting a container with 2 elements, and when you get to the second element, look up it's supposed to match a notification. That's what we'd be doing. I don't know that that's a great problem, but if you want to solve that problem, fine.
I see your point. Maybe it was obvious to you, but apparently it was not obvious to some of us. All right.
Okay, and it's
Andy, I want to summarize.
I would like to get to see. I don't care if this next generation Yang push uses the RFC 52 header. The 5277. It's okay to just use a new header. That see, if I had to just destruct with all the fields in it, then it can make a SID file. I've just been waiting patiently for this SID file for 4 years or something. I really care about this validation because it's 2 leaves, 1 leaf. It's not that much to do. But the process to get a SID file kind of requires this, which is unfortunate, but it's actually not unfortunate. Otherwise, you'd have to have all these special little hacky files. So
I've been waiting in the queue, but exactly that. So, I mean, I think if we were to try to distill what is the highest level requirements that are being asked for, one is the ability to create SID files for notifications. I mean, even though it's not being said out loud, I honestly believe that's actually the primary motivation for this discussion. And
hold on a second, please. Well, I would just like to ask all the actual working group, all your blue dots, to make that an official thing of NetConf. I've had talks with Karsten about it. He's asked me, why isn't this official work to support Yang push with CBOR? And I said, I don't know. So,
right.
I think that should be an official thing the working group's doing.
Right, but I think that is the unstated requirement that we're having this interim about, is how to do this with CBOR. And the other thing is how to extend the headers and with additional fields, which like observation time and things like that, which I fully support. And I had my hand up for a while, but I was trying to say, or I was holding on to the thought that the presentation is kind of inside out, and I wish it was more like outside in. And what I mean is the presentation is describing a solution as first, as opposed to what is the problem. Like I actually, what Andy said at the top or much earlier about if we have a new header, and interoperability with legacy clients is the primary concern. The discussion should be mostly about how do the legacy clients, or I should say new clients, opt in to the new header, right? I mean, the legacy clients should never receive the new header. They should only ever receive the existing headers for whatever transport they're using. If they're using NetConf, legacy NetConf notifications or 8040 SSE notifications or whatever, right? The legacy clients should be not interrupted, but new clients should be able to opt in. And so it seems to me the discussion should be mostly about how the new clients opt in.
May I jump in briefly? I think Ahmed tried before to structure a bit the discussion, and I think Kent, you were also following up on that, defining the problem statement. So I think Alex tried to explain that in slide 8 and 9 when going into JSON and CBOR. Would that be a start to maybe discuss whether what is describing here, it is valid or it's not valid, and why it should not be valid?
Yeah, so in a way, what I wanted feedback from is that if a message encoded in JSON, which is allowed by Young Push, how is this message encoded, and if whether we need to fix that gap or not. That's let's say the first point of what Ahmed said.
I see Dan in the queue. Dan, you have a thought?
Yeah, I hope my mic works. I got some. Yeah, it works. So, Ken, I just want to go back on your point, inside out, inside in, outside in, on problem. On slide 4, this is really discussing or representing the problem there. I mean, that's what even you, Andy, acknowledge that there's no way we can have a notification or that the yellow is acknowledged on the other side. So is it not the problem statement that everybody should be agreeing? Or is there something else that we're refusing to accept?
Yeah, well, since you're, I think your question is to me, so I'll try to respond. I'm not so sure if this is the problem, because, like, okay, so this is just a header, right? And the idea is to validate the header. But guess what? This header is on top of other headers, such as the TCP header or the UDP header or the IP header. Are we going to validate any of those headers? No. So in my mind, this header is just with the transport. So, I mean, we have different transports, and each transport is defining their own headers. And I think Alex had a slide that said, let each transport decide. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, like, let each transport decide what their own header is. And it's kind of unfortunate that the current header, the 5277 header, defines this event time, which is metadata. And I mean, in my thinking, we should effectively discard it, right? Like that event time is irrelevant. If we want to jump to solutions, I would suggest maybe having an Uber notification, something called a notification. So the Uber notification is able to transport over all existing notification transports, but that Uber notification has the ability to convey additional headers, which is ultimately what we want. So I don't think the discussion should be about how to validate the headers, to your question, Ahmed. I don't believe that is the discussion. I think the discussion, I mean, I think that each transport says, this is my header. And really the question is, how do we validate the contents? And we wish to have additional contents.
The thing is,
so basically, we don't have, sorry, I'm still in queue. So basically, we don't have a consensus on the acknowledgement of the problem statement that is on top. I'm just going back, slide 4 is kind of early in the deck. There's a description of the problem statement, and we're not really aligned that this is a problem. I mean, that's the starting point. And then that's a question now towards the rest of the peers in the working group. I can leave the queue now.
Yeah. I think on the right, I think the existing toolings can validate it, but it's undefined in any RFC. I think that we need to have a way to have this as defined. It is defining things in retrospective. So it's not as urgent because people already figured a common way of doing this, but it would be nice to have it validated in some way. I'm here talking about the parts in red, the IETF notification and event time. So this is usually assumed by the implementation. It's going to be this way, but there is nothing that says how. For point 2, whether this is the right solution, I don't think so, because this is Ben's their Yang rules. This is not standard Yang, that what is proposed here. None of the existing Yang toolings, to my opinion, unless someone come with something to show me that I'm wrong, with like testing existing tooling. So I tested with this tool and this tool and this tool, and without modifying them, right, that this actually could work. I don't think this could work. So maybe we have a better way. It's either appending the RFCs for 7951 and 5254 to say this is the specific way of how Yang is notification are represented in this particular format. It's nothing to do with Yang anymore. It just this is how we can add the notification header on top. For 3, yes, we need to find a better way to extend these headers in the future, because I think standards should be about extensibility and should always allow for space to extensibility. And that could involve rewriting how the header works so it can accommodate this extensibility. Because at the moment, it's assumed the XML accessibility, which doesn't apply to JSON and doesn't apply to Yang, let's say. It does apply to JSON to some extent, but it doesn't apply to Yang.
So yeah, I agree with all the points from Ahmed. So from the audience, is this a problem we want to solve? So from the working group, or we should just not solve it, go to the new let's say Yang next notification header?
Maybe from my side, what I worry, and I think Ahmed said it very nicely. He said basically implementers found a way around. I also stumbled on back then on erratas where implementers were filing. And my worry is just that we are ending up with different implementations, and that's something we need to prevent, because the promise here is what we are selling to the operator is that we have an interoperable solution. If at the end we don't have one, then IETF Yang push won't be successful.
Okay, so this is still worth solving?
I think so. I mean, the other alternative is that we are proposing a new header. But here my worry is this discussion is already going on for quite some time. There is now a window of opportunity. The industry saw that there is troubles with the different, let's say, non-standardized Yang notification which the main vendors have implemented. If we are not now giving a good alternative quickly, we end up not solving the problem. So either we have now a clear way of solving the existing problem, or we are moving on very quickly with a new proposal.
I see Rob Wilton in the queue, and also let's use the queue now. It seems like there's a lot of over talk, so use the queue, please.
So I sort of think that for the Yang push implementations, the stuff that Thomas and Co are driving effectively, I think that we want extra fields in here. So trying to just look at this problem of saying how to encode existing notifications using JSON is not going to take us to where we need to get to, because I think we won't get those extra fields in unless we sort of bung them in lower down, which I don't think is the right solution. So I think that really we need to get to the point where we define the new header, a notification to maybe, or something like that. And that includes like the sysname field and the sequence ID fields that you're asking for, Thomas. I can't remember if sequence ID is applicable to everything, but we can check. And the event time, if that's still appropriate. We define that as an RFC. It picks up, it merges effectively Alex's draft and one of Thomas's drafts together, pulls those in. I think that then sort of solves it, and we don't then need to go back and fix the existing notification one and the 5277 stuff. We can just leave that alone, and we can just have a config option on devices to turn on this new notification structure. It can be used everywhere. And I think that might be an easier path forward in terms of getting consensus. I don't know if that's sort of hopefully what Andy's pushing for.
Maybe let me ask maybe another solution. What you're proposing, Rob? Why? I mean, with IETF Yang push, we already have an existing header. Why are we not moving forward and say, why do we need two headers, a notification and an IETF Yang push header? Why not just simply remove the notification header and work with the existing IETF Yang push header and add everything we want to?
I'm not sure I understand. I think the question is, if you don't want to change, if you don't want to add fields directly in at the top level, directly under the notification header, because I think that's the bit that Andy has an issue with, is if you're putting them in sort of as peers to event time, he sees that as an issue. So if you don't do that, then we can just use the existing header, and the clarification is we need to define how you encode it in JSON over UDP, or JSON effectively it's not going over NETCONF. So that could be a solution. But if you want to have these extra headers like sysname and things which might be useful, and you want to apply that to all notifications, then I think that having the ability to replace the existing 5277 notification header is the nice way and correct way of doing that.
I understood that. So my proposal was more like, if you look at the example in front of you, you see two blue lines and two yellow lines. And then the fifth line, you see IETF Yang push. And basically everything subscription related is within this IETF Yang push. So I was just proposing, why not use this header and move basically the line number 3, 4, and 5 down to the IETF Yang push level.
So you can do, and then so you only get sysname and sequence number for Yang push messages. You'd need to obviously add it into every single one of those messages that you want. So be the push update and the push update change, and also all the sorts of subscription notifications as well. So
yes.
So yeah, that's the consequence, and you wouldn't obviously get those sysname notifications for any other notifications coming off the device.
Exactly. So my point was just like, I think there is not only the choice of saying we need to do a new notification header versus keeping the old one. There is also a third option. We could go this way as well, you know. But you pointed out that
Benoit is in queue. Benoit.
Right. So yes, we could focus on the end goal, which is to have like a header with new fields in there. That would work. Now, if you go on slide number 5, Alex, please. Because in the end, we've been trying to look at this, but here is the thing. I mean, we've got a lot of dependencies, right? So whether we put the fields, fine, but you've got like 8341 young push. That relies on 8639. That relies on 5277. So in principle, I agree with you, Rob, but you're a previous AD, right? You know the mess of having all these references, and there always will be someone telling, oh yeah, but you don't have the right normative informatic reference, etc. So how did it work? We start from scratch, and we just say those 83, 41, and 39, I mean, they were anyway not implemented. And that could be a way, right?
Well, there's other. I think there's other discussions we've had about maybe extending Yang push in different ways, and I'm not sure we want to go down that rabbit hole now. But yeah, appreciate your concerns, Benoit, in terms of this being more complicated than it needs to be. But for what I'm thinking of, wouldn't it just be an update? We'd be updating 8639. Not even, we wouldn't touch 5277 at all. We'd be updating 8639, saying with an extra option to add in this option to use this extra header, and effectively it would say it replace 5277 with this new header type, and you define how it's encoded based on the existing text and things. So you'd lift what's there.
And that would work. This is exactly why someone mentioned that we took the problem the wrong way by focusing too much on this pretty old and annoying 5277. It's because we went all the way back. We're going back to the going up in the references, right? So whatever way works, I would agree with you. Let's not lose track of the end goal, which is to have extensible header.
Yeah, Andy.
So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify something Rob said, that, and I'm totally agreeing with him, that you just need a new leaf in established subscription or in the configured subscriptions that says, I want the new header. And if you don't opt in, then you get the 5277 header, but it's a complete replacement of the header. And like Kent said, it's kind of part of the transport, even though we're defining it in Yang, but it's it's like you don't need to touch 5277. As I'm just agreeing with all that. So the solution path seems pretty clear, that you're just defining the new stuff and a way for the new client to select it. I always thought it was a bit odd in the UDP notif draft that there was just a number defined for CBOR or JSON, like number 1 or 2. And it's like, well, no one's defined this way to do this. Well, there's the draft that's wanting this. So it seems like that's the place to, to drive it from. But unless this is new transports, I don't know. It seems like the UDP notif transport is driving this, not the 5277 compatibility or something, but.
All right, Benoit, are you still in the queue? You're top of queue. I think you're okay. Great, Andy. I think you just Holga. You're next in queue, please, Holga.
Yeah. So basically, I'm supporting the idea of creating a new header, and also that we have to be quick then. But I just have some concern. Maybe Andy just removed that from my head. But if we move the sequence number and the host name down to the Yang push header and still keep the RFC 5277 header, host name and sequence number, for example, on CBOR can't be encoded. It must be readable so that all the systems can let's say, route this information in the right way. What we are doing then is creating a massive overhead in the header. And that is something I'm currently really dealing with. I want to avoid that. That's just something I want to say. But just to finish that, I think Andy just proposed opt-in, skip everything related to 5277 and get a new defined header. Or did I get something wrong there?
Yeah, just getting back to what Andy said, that this, let's say, how these notifications should be encoded should be defined in the transport. Would that mean that the HTTPS notif and UDP notif could have different encodings? Because that's something that I don't want. No, for me, you have the transport layer, who is purely the transfer for a notification, and then you have the application layer, which is you have your own, let's say, encoding, but both messages could send over, let's say, UDP notif or HTTPS notif, but I wouldn't want that the transport defines this header. Just this point.
Oh, I think I'm next in queue. So I just want to go back to the comment that I made before about a Uber notification. I don't know if people are really latching on to that idea correctly or completely. But the idea is that we would define a Yang module that defines a notification called notification, and that notification would contain all the new headers that we wish for, and could be augmented by future modules if necessary. Of course, clients need to opt into the additional headers, but that's besides the point. The thing is that this Uber notification would be completely Yang validatable, right? It would still be a two-step validation. I mean, or if you really want to think about it at the transport level, a three-step validation, where you first have to extract the 5277 header and throw it away, and then you validate the Uber notification, and then you validate the contents of the notification. And the Uber notification could be what some, I think there's a different draft called a bundled messages, or, so it may not just be a single notification. It could be a multiplicity of notifications, right? So you can't just simply validate the notification in a single pass. It has to be multi-pass validation, where you're extracting headers and then you get down to the details and you validate the details.
All right, I think I'm next in queue. So I latch a little bit, Kent, in your proposal. Rather, I disagree in the sense that it should be a new one, not latching on the existing notification. Should be a new header. It could be as simple as a Yang container. It has few headers like event time, sequence number, whatever we want there, and any data payload, which will carry the existing notification from Yang as it is, without the event time, without anything. It just what is described in the Yang schema and notification, everything is under should be in that any data. So, and for the transport versus not transport, this should be the one, and that's it. So this Yang should describe the entirety of what comes after the UDP, TCP, or HTTP header. So it's decoupled from the transport. And the big advantage from there is it's going to be by default supporting all the encodings that Yang support, because it's a Yang message at the end. It's a Yang data tree that is being sent. So it can be encoded in any Yang encoding that is already existing, or maybe in the future someone will invent a new Yang encoding, so it will automatically get it. The question becomes then how the client and server can negotiate this. I want this encoding versus the other encoding to be sent.
Thomas,
you're next in queue, please.
Thanks. Just wanted to comment on Ahmed. I also agree that either we are resolving the issues with RFC 5277 notification header, or we are proposing a replacement with a new header. I would not continue on using the existing header if it's not resolved.
Yeah, adding also to what Ahmed said, that this notification header should work with all the encodings. This is also an issue I raised during the presentation, where these notifications are defined differently in the different encodings. Should we also fix to have a common way to define these notifications, or it's up to the encoding to define that?
I think, to answer the question, I think it's a bit of both. So I think that if we define this new notification 2 header, we define it using Yang structure or something to define what it looks like. So from that sense, we get the common Yang for it. And then we probably have a section saying, for XML, you encode it this way, and you do it exactly how you'd expect it to be encoded. For JSON, you do it this way. And so you probably have like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs saying you just do this the obvious way for these given encodings. And if somebody comes up with a new encoding, they'll be obliged to update this and say, yes, and this is how you do it for some, proto buff or something, whatever comes along next as the way of encoding Yang data. So yes, I think it is entirely agnostic to the encoding, but it'd be minimal impact is how I'm thinking.
Okay.
I tend to disagree a little bit with Rob, if I understood you correctly. So I think that it should be as just a Yang data tree that's been sent, nothing special about it. In this case, for the new notification, it is just a container that have 2 or 3 leaves that are the metadata, like event time, sequence number, system number, whatever. And then you have a payload which will carry the Yang notification. How that is encoded is going to be subject to whatever the standard Yang encoding of that specific format. Stay away from structures because they're not very well used in the community. It's very hard to deal with them. Yeah.
So just to reply back to Ahmed, say yes, using a container rather than structure, that's absolutely fine. But you still just need that little binding at the top to say a notification is using this container effectively. That's the bit of text that's required to bind the top level notification to this is how it's being represented in Yang.
So do you really need it if the clients and servers are negotiated that, either with the capability in NETCONF or in the HTTP case, you have the encoding format part of the header of the HTTP header? Do you really need it there then?
Yeah, I think so. So I think if you look at, I don't know where the text exactly is in RESTconf, maybe someone will have the pointer, but somewhere in the RESTconf RFC, 8040, it says, this is how you encode a notification in JSON when using RESTconf. And it's about a paragraph or 2 paragraphs of text saying, this is what it looks like. And it's the obvious text to say what you want, but it's section 6 maybe. So it just says, look, this is the namespace you use, and this is how you encode the fields. You do it exactly as you would expect. And I think you need to have that sort of paragraph for XML, JSON, for CBOR. You'd have to have and say, look, this is how you do it. That top level structure is like, here's how you bootstrap it. And then everything else is fine.
But I'm worried about if we get to the top level structure again, adding it a top level structure, then we will get back in the same problem because we have a top level structure that's extensible.
And finally, so I think that's a different question. So if we define a new notification 2 structure, I think it's a separate question as to whether that should be extensible and allow extra fields to be added in or not. So yes, it could be, or we could say, no, you can't. I don't know which is the right answer. We may want extensibility and say that's fine, but we'd still be okay, because you could say in that document is, if extra fields augment into here, they must be encoded the same way as you'd expect it to be anyway, like a standard Yang encoding. So you're still covered without anything specific to any encoding. So the sort of JSON encoding is not going to say, this is how you encode event time, this is how you encode sysname. It's going to say, this is how you encode the top level notification structure, and all the fields underneath here that are defined under the container or the structure are encoded in a standard way as if they were below a container. So you can still define it in a generic way, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Rob that you would need some text, because otherwise the different encodings, they define the notification header differently.
Maybe just to add, I think at the end we should define what should be like the basic part, the basic elements in the notification header. And then the second thing is we have RFC 91, 96, where the system capabilities and the notification capabilities can be discovered. And there, I think we should define the optional things which can be discovered then. But here, one question, Kent, this Uber notification, did I understood correct that it would replace the notification header of 5277?
No, that wasn't my intention. The intention was that the Uber notification would be the notification that is being conveyed by 5277 and every other transport, such as SSC in 8040. But the Uber notification would have all the extra headers that we care for.
So I understood, Ahmed, at the concern that we are not really resolving the problem if we are just adding on top of all the headers.
I'm not sure if there's a problem, though. I mean, as Andy said at the very, very top, this is something, I mean, this has been working for years, a decade now. What is the problem?
We're going back to no consensus of problem. I'd like to, how many people here were 15 people? Maybe we should have like a poll or something. How many people see a problem and how many does not?
Per, I think you're listening. Can you construct a poll, if it makes sense to you?
Absolutely. But in my opinion, I don't really know what to put there. Is it clear what the problem is? Yes or no? Is that the poll we want to do?
Well, if we have a disconnect with understanding the problem, and some people say there's no problem and others says yes, there's problem. In fact, the slide is called with problem statement. So there's something there to, or maybe we're just 15 people, we're not enough even to do this. If we do that at Dublin with more people that have read a bit more, then maybe it will be more relevant. But it feels like we're going in circle, acknowledging and not acknowledging the problem.
Maybe.
Okay, so
Alex,
let's
can you go
try
to
this.
slide 7?
Let's try this poll. Is it clear what problem Natif Yang wants to solve?
Here I have a suggestion. Alex did slide 7 and 8. Maybe Alex, can you go there?
This one?
So notifications are not explicitly covered. He's writing there on Yang JSON and 9. Can you go to the next slide, Alex? And here the same. I think the question is whether we are agreeing to this or not.
So maybe the issue is it underdefined, the notification, or not? That would be how I would put the question.
Since you can't get a SID file, it's obviously underdefined. No.
So okay, SIDs. So let's say SIDs apart, because you can encode still CBOR messages without SIDs, right? Using names in the keys. So that would be as JSON actually. And even if we don't go to CBOR, how a Yang notification looks like in JSON. This is so there is some sort of definition in another statement, but there is no anything explicit in the 7951. So that's why, in a way, developers are struggling sometimes to get how it should be defined.
Okay. So it has sort of the first question. It's clear to everyone what the problem is, and maybe I can create another poll like this. Let's see. Let's try this. Do we need a Yang definition for notifications so we can define them in encodings like JSON and CBOR? Perhaps should have put in a new Yang definition. But that is.
This one. So I voted yes because I like the tooling work based on Yang, but from what I understood from Andy and Ahmed, Yang does not allow this definition. So even if we vote yes, I would love some feedback from the group on how to define this one.
I assumed Bert's correction when he said a new Yang definition.
Okay, so that's for the extensions then.
I would say my intention with this question is to define a new Yang definition, not going back to all the history, and we now are digging around in XSDs and so on. Because that has been stated that it's not possible to do with current standards and Yang tooling, and they assume certain leaves. So now, do we need a new? It doesn't say so in the poll, but since it's impossible from the current stack to do it, and it seems apparent to everyone that we need a new definition.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly say, I think there is a need for a new Yang notification, but this is that Uber notification that I refer to. I mean, there may be other ways, and maybe other ways are better, but I think we should take a careful look at the Uber notification idea.
So we have a few, so just to summarize, we have a few suggestions. This Uber notification, and then a totally new, separate opt-in notification header. Those are the two things on the table that I've seen.
Ken, could you just re-describe your Uber notification header? What do you mean by that?
Sure. I mean for there to exist a Yang module that defines a notification statement called notification, or Uber notification for the purpose of this discussion. And the contents of that notification would be that it contains a set number of new header fields that we care for, event time being the first one, I suppose, and then others like observation time, system name, etc. And then also an any data, which would be able to convey whatever the payload notification is. So it's really just a middle layer, if you will. It's a notification that's able, so it can transport over all existing transports, but it contains the additional metadata that we care for.
But if you want to the existing transports, doesn't it have to either redefine that or use 5277? Isn't that the two options?
I don't understand. What's the question?
So how, if you've got a new notification header, is it using 5277?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So if you were using 5277, you would receive a notification that has the normal event time header, but you just discard it. And then you dig into what is the actual payload of the 5277 notification. You discover that it is this quote unquote Uber notification, and you know how to process the Uber notification. And, because it's defined up front to have a certain number of fields, but then two, it may have been augmented by additional modules that added additional fields, but nonetheless, you're able to process it. And both its header, or what I'd call the envelope, and as well as the payload. And then you get into the payload and you can process the payload.
So you're going to have the event time twice in the
exactly. Yeah, exactly that.
Really?
Yes. I want to be very clear. I'm talking about discarding, like completely discarding the event time that's being conveyed by the transports. The 5277 event time, it would be discarded. It's effectively irrelevant and obsoleted by the Uber headers event time.
Why do you do that? I mean, if you want to do something clean, it seems that
because I want everything
backward compatible with RFCs 52727, and as a consequence, we're going to just put the field twice.
Yeah, because I want the entirety of the header to be Yang validatable.
But is that going to work with how? And maybe it's the same issue. How's that going to work with existing notifications that say effectively they write into the existing any data? Maybe I have the same issue with what I'm proposing instead. I don't know. Because effectively you're adding an extra layer between the 5277 to bridge it into a new notification structure, in essence. That's what you're saying. And then within that new notification structure, you then carry your payload data that you'd have today. So you just sort of added in a shim layer.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's right.
And so somebody else going to, Ahmed, go ahead.
So I'm the queue. So I agree with Kent about the Uber notification. I just don't agree about carrying to 5277. I want that to be the one that's being sent. Everything else we don't need anymore. We don't need to keep backward compatibility with 5277.
So I'm in the queue, and as a contributor, I would probably say that it would be better to have a new header as well and not duplicate data. The questioning is then how a server that serves both legacy clients and new clients would do if you have to configure it to be server-wide, so that you either get the new or the old, or if it could be per session or subscription instead. That is how 8639 defines it. In a NetConf session, you can't have both 5277 and 8639 subscriptions, but you can have them both on separate sessions on a server. Alex, you're in queue.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, I agree that we should replace rather than having a header that it's backward compatible with the other one. And also, if we provide a way to opt in to this header, that's all fixed. In my opinion, no, because whenever the client don't want the new header, he would configure it differently and would receive the older one. So that's what I think.
Per, maybe we should have another poll and ask the question, if we are introducing a new header, whether it should be on top or replacing the 5277 defined header.
That's actually a very good question, because in the end, as Alex mentioned, while you're preparing your poll, is that if I got a network, I'm going to configure the same thing from all the router. I'm not going to play with negotiation of headers. Same config, exactly like you put an IPFix template, the same one all over the place.
While the poll is being prepared, I just want to say 5277 is heavily tied to XML, and replacing the header will give us a chance to consider all the other encodings when we do the new header and make sure we have a good story to say for the current existing Yang encoding or the future ones, we can send notifications over them in a more smooth way.
I hope I got the poll right. A new header replaced the RFC5277 header is yes, and be used as a payload within existing headers is no. Silence is consent, so I think I got it right. Yeah, so go in once, twice, click now, or don't. Okay, thank you.
This is, to me, maybe the most important question, because whenever you mention backward compatibility can't, I was always wondering with what, 5277 or 8641 that was never implemented. So in the end, I don't believe it's important.
Okay, Ahmed, you're in queue. Still.
Sorry, I thought the left's over.
Okay. So as a chair, then it seems that there's a more clear path forward with creating a new header that would replace RFC 5277. So the open questions then that I've heard, or that we'll all have heard, are if we want it to be opt-in, when we want it to be opt-in, basically.
Well, if you're using dynamic subscription, you would assume that it would be in the dynamic subscription request. If you're using a configured subscription, you would assume that there'd be some sort of ability to configure if you want to use the new header. And I don't know, maybe for all the legacy abilities to opt into receiving, like for instance, 8040 SSEs, or I mean, maybe we don't extend those to be able to get the new header, and we just let them sort of always use the old header.
So it would still be extensions to young push and subscribe notifications, right? All the rest would be out of the scope?
Possibly. And that's what I said, yes.
Okay.
Interested to hear other people's opinion.
I agree with that.
Yeah, as a contributor, I also think it would be good to have it on a subscription level and not on a server level to support the opt-in.
So I've just suggested allowing it to be configured at both, as in have some global level thing just to label it to be turned on everywhere potentially, as well as having it per subscription, possibly. And the reason for that is that if effectively everyone's going to turn this on and use it always, then just being able to set it in one place is nicer than having to remember to turn it on for every single subscription.
Basically wanted the same as Rob.
Oh, and just to add one more nuance, I said, mate, is it per subscription or is it per receiver? Obviously, if you do a dynamic subscription, has to be per subscription, but I don't know for configured which of those two places would be a better place to put this config.
Just to double check if I understood Rob's suggestion, basically a client, when he does the subscription, would then doing the subscription say, I like to have the new header? Or is it default?
You'd at the moment you'd say I'd like to have the new header, but we could have a so for every single subscription, or maybe for every receiver, you'd say I want to be receiving the new header, but you could also put the configuration higher up to say either I want it for all notifications on the device, or perhaps all Yang push notifications or subscribe notifications, depending on where you put it within that data model. You could have some level of hierarchical config. I don't know what's the most appropriate place.
And how about, like, to say, for instance, now to keep backward compatibility, it's optional. You can configure yes or no. And in the future, we are bumping the version and say, it's default on. You cannot deconfigure that anymore.
And for that one, if we do a yang push bis or next, like an updated version of yang push, then maybe that's the sort of point in time that maybe it becomes it's mandatory for yang push next. This is the only structure that we use.
Agree.
Holger, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I would prefer, let's say, something like a global knob inside the network element where I can put my preference, the new or the old, and then there's something like the dynamics description that overrides this configuration. That's what I have in mind for that.
So on my mind for dynamic subscription, anyway, there is a negotiation part with NetConf capabilities. So the client and server can communicate what they like. Then there is no need to define what is define it too much, because anyway they have to negotiate it. For configured subscriptions, in this case, the client doesn't have any say over what the router said, and it's a configuration in the router to say this is submitting, this is sending version 1 or version 2 of the notifications, and we assume here the network operator configured the network correctly.
Maybe just before we are reaching the top of the hour, maybe a question for another poll, like so that we have the full clear picture here. What's currently being defined in RFC 8639 and 8641, whether there is a gap in the specification or not. Because I think if I look now at the poll, at the 3 questions, not sure whether this has been covered yet.
So Thomas, I would like to clarify your question, please. So whenever we want a new header, which is like the result of the previous poll, your question is, should we base this on 8649 and 8639, or we just start from scratch? This is the question behind your question?
I think I clearly understood that the working group wants to go in the direction that we need the definitions for JSON and CBOR in Yang, right? And we want a new header replacing the existing 5277 header, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, do we need, I think implies that basically, I'm not sure if that implies that wherever there is a gap or not. It's a fine point, but maybe, because we were circling back and forth on this question.
So I typed up a poll, should RFC 8639 and 8641 be updated where there is a gap in definition when creating a new notification header? Is that catching your concern, Thomas?
Exactly.
Thank you.
I'm not too sure how to answer that one. If there is a gap, well, obviously we need to update it, right? So it's like, are you against or for cutting trees?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not too sure what it implies.
I cannot answer this one.
Yeah, I think it's the same as Benoit. So I think those are going to be updated. At least one of those will be updated anyway to say you have the flexibility to use this new notification header.
Well, the problem is I don't think it's really in 8639 to make the fix. I mean, we started off saying that the issue was that the various encodings like JSON and CBOR didn't have mappings for the notification. And so that's really the root problem. And if we were to have like a new RFC that defined the new header and had the mappings to all the various different encodings, then maybe that's what we're looking for, as opposed to a fix to 8639.
I wonder if the question is instead if the new notification header also should define new new notifications then for effectively updating 8639 and 8641.
I'm not sure, because these two RFCs are about mechanism for subscribing. They don't describe the encoding. I think this is encoding problem in Yang. Not quite sure. I mean, maybe once we far along with the proposals, maybe we have to look it back, but I think it's too early to decide now.
Maybe to be more clear, so in 8639 we have section 1.4 and 2.6, which are pointing to the notification header of 5277. So we are updating and saying basically there is now a second option, and I think that's where we're heading. Is that correct?
That's also my intuition.
And that's also why I think that the point that Ahmed just said isn't relevant anymore then, because we are updating it and it isn't related to the encoding anymore.
I'm not sure I could agree with that, because you should still need to define those encodings since it is underdefined for young push.
Yes, but
So I agree with you. It should be a Yang-based solution, but at least there should be some text saying that this new notification looks like that, because otherwise, with Yang JSON and Yang CBOR, you don't have this definition.
Yep.
If I understand correctly, Alex, so you're showing here slide 8, notifications are not explicitly covered for Yang JSON. So basically we would update 7951 and say that that's the notification, which is
So I think that's a bit like this draft, updating subscribe notifications, because you are changing or being able to opt in to the new notification, and also all the Yangs maybe. So 7950, 7951, and CBOR, because at the end you are also defining how this new notification when the client has opt-in looks like. And so I think, it's a bit like this draft where at the beginning I showed that it's updating a bunch of them.
Right. So, or in other words, like it's the existing document, but instead of proposing a struct for defining the 5277, it would define a new notification header instead. But everything else remains.
Yes, and but also provide ways to opt into this new notification header.
Agree.
Aren't we jumping too much into details now? But yeah.
I've just put it in the chat. Actually, it's just to say that the updates tag in RFCs is not well defined. That people use it for different meanings. Some is I'm changing the meaning of this text, and hence I need to update it. Others use it to mean this is sort of a related piece of work, and hence it's sort of tied into it. So I'm not sure we know the answer to those questions. I think we just need to write it start writing the document, and then I think that helps sort of guide which direction this goes in. But I do understand about the time aspect here as well.
I would like to come back. I think it's my turn. Ken, you're still in the queue, but I guess this is the old one. So I want to come back to the opt-in because we keep telling opt-in, but for configure subscription, it's just a different configuration set. So it's not like we're going to say, oh, I want to have telemetry, and then I want to have those options. There is no negotiation. There is potentially a capability discovery, but this is completely different, right? An update of RFC 9196, then the client knows what he wants and configures that in. So there is no opting on negotiation. It's just pure different config. Do we agree on that point?
So just to answer you that, for me, yes, opt-in, what I mean by opting in is having a new leaf defining that I want this new notification header. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Benoit, for stepping ahead of me. I was talking to the mute button. I just want to be sensitive to people's time. I'm personally okay to continue on, but this interim was scheduled for now, mid-September, because Alex and others were on holiday or time off, and so this was basically the earliest that we could schedule this interim. If it seems like we need to continue discussion, maybe we should have a follow-on interim. There's still time before 121 to schedule another interim if we want to continue this conversation. But anyway, any thoughts on that?
On my side, I believe there's a little bit of homework. So I'm glad that we clarified a couple of things, specifically question number 3. But which document update, which one? Maybe Alex and Thomas have it clear in their head, but we need to maybe I would like to review it and look at all the references and normative and all this, and from there maybe propose a solution. So there's some homework involved.
Okay, thanks. Rob, yes?
I was just going to say, I think for me, I think it's all concluded today. I think some folks need to write the text, and then we need to look at that, and then I don't know what the time is in terms of how busy people are, how quickly they're able to get a document out with this for us to review. If there's commitment to get that done within a few weeks, we'd have another interim. It's like in 2 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time or something. But otherwise, we do it in Dublin.
All right, that sounds good. Benoit, you're in queue. Benoit's no longer in queue. Okay, I think this concludes our virtual interim. Thank you, everybody, for joining and participating in the conversation. It was quite interesting, and I think the chairs will have fun trying to collate all the comments from the chat window with the actual dialogue that was occurring. But we'll try to get those minutes out as quickly as possible. Thank you again, and have a good rest of day or evening, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thanks as well.